Chris, I'll start with you. What do you make of, I mean, what is your knee-jerk reaction to banning a sitting president for a couple of weeks?
It's an extraordinary action.
And the reasons that they cited for it.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary action, but these are extraordinary times. I mean, I don't think we've ever faced a situation where, the president of the United States is effectively advocating armed insurrection against, the Congress that's certifying the electoral vote that beat him. And so it's extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And so this is actually a measured response to the situation that's been created by the president.
So that said, do we have to worry about the precedent here, or do you think it's such a unique situation that it's basically this is all as it relates to this president and this particular moment, and that's kind of going to be the last of it?
This is a pretty, just the most extreme circumstance that you could ever imagine. And the action that's been taken is, I think, measured to that. I do think that precedentially that it should be a principle going forward still that maybe there's a closer watch on the likelihood of whether something would move into an armed insurrection. And obviously the harm policies that Facebook has articulated both publicly and that it holds privately in terms of the way that the policy enforcement works here are looking at that. And I think they will continue to look at that. The process of thinking that a president would ever stoop to the level that President Trump has been hard for most Americans to wrap their minds around, let alone the Facebook policy apparatus.
Julia, let's talk about YouTube for a moment. We just heard Roger McNamee saying that they should be considering similar moves and that they're as responsible as other platforms here. YouTube has already kind of talked about a little bit about this, saying, starting today, any channels posting new videos with false claims in violation of our policies will now receive a strike and so forth. Are they going to be under more pressure?
I do think all of these companies are going to be under more pressure, Kelly. And to the point of your last question, I think what's really important here is these are companies. They can set their own rules. They are not public utilities, though sometimes they may be regulated as such. They can set their own rules. And what's important is that they show that they enforce those rules consistently. What they're showing here with this move, or what Facebook is showing here with this move today, is that President Trump is so much in violation of its rules that they believe this is a necessary step in order to secure the safety of the platform. So what I think we're going to see going forward is perhaps more pressure on these companies to make sure they're enforcing the rules fully. It's very hard in whack-a-mole situations to pull down content instantaneously. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook have all, instituted various, algorithmic things and artificial intelligence to be able to instantly identify offensive content. But at the end of the day, Kelly, it is very hard to enforce that. And I think they're just going to be under more pressure to do so. And I think YouTube will come under more scrutiny. And Kelly, it's because it's not just about the organization of things like the riot we saw yesterday, but also the spread of information that can incite that kind of behavior.
The language from Senator Warner, Chris, is pretty strong here. He says, as I've continually said, these platforms have served as core organizing infrastructure for violent far-right groups and militia movements, helping them recruit, organize, coordinate, and in many cases, and he says with respect to YouTube, generate profits from their violent extremist content. So what's the next step there for those who would say that they do play a role? Some might say they're unfairly being blamed for everything that occurred, but if they did and do actively play a role in these issues?
A lot of this is about enforcement at the end of the day, that in many cases, the sites have the right policies and have articulated them over time, and striking the balance between allowing for pretty extensive political speech and wide, robust, open debate, and the move to violent insurrection can sometimes, unfortunately, be quite a thin line. American constitutional law and American First Amendment law has tried to draw those lines very carefully over time, and I know that Facebook has been inspired by that. When it moves directly into action, though, the enforcement actually becomes somewhat easier. Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Google have been trying to develop more and more technology to address this harmful content early on, and I think that they will continue to invest extraordinarily heavily in all of these things. I know that Facebook continues to be very focused on that, and say that look, the rules are clear, and we have to focus on enforcement situations. And this was one where such an extraordinary action was taken. Even after the armed insurrection in the Capitol, you had the president essentially defending the people who were taking action, and that means that the danger for the remaining 14 days of his term was too great to allow him to use the platform.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.